Welcome into Boxing Scene Today here at the ProBox TV studios. Well, Lamont Roach Jr., the news is, where is he going to go? We know about Gervonta Davis taking on a fight we're not exactly thrilled about. We all know about the Paul fight. That is coming up later in the year. So where does that leave Lamont Roach Jr.? It looks like Floyd Mayweather, money himself, has thrown his name in the hat for his fighter. But will it happen, and is the money there? Well, Jimmy Smith in studio alongside the champ. That's right, Paulie Malignaggi, Chris Algieri joining us via Zoom. Well, if you look at the articles, Mayweather wants his prodigy, Curmel Moton, to fight Lamont Roach Jr. next, as he will throw his own money into that fight. Lamont Roach Jr. right now saying he has bigger fish to fry. What could those fish be? Paulie, talking about this fight, Moton is one of those guys, really decorated amateur, very exciting style, but just starting his pro career. Could this be the stay busy fighter? Paul, you're always saying stay away from punchers, but Lamont Roach Jr. very experienced. What's your thought?
This is an interesting proposition.
It is interesting.
Floyd has a good eye. I'll tell you that.
He does.
For Floyd to like this matchup, he may see something in Lamont that's, that he feels Curmel could take advantage of. Now, Curmel's super physically gifted. I don't know mentally yet where he's at. I don't get a good read on him because he's been so dominant physically that I haven't gotten a good read on him mentally. I was working a show last year, though, where he blew the weight by like 10 pounds, though. So that led me to be a little bit suspicious of him. But then, you look at his resume, and he's got wins over some pretty solid guys for this point in his career. That guy Cuba that we've had on Pro Box, that guy's a rough dude, and Curmel, champ, you correct me if I'm wrong, he stopped him, right? Did Curmel stop Cuba?
No. It was a unanimous decision. He won every round, but it was a war.
He beat on him, though, and that guy Cuba is rugged. So when it comes to Roach, and Jimmy, I know you talk about not taking on punches. There's a flip side to this coin, right? Sometimes you say, oh, are you putting your guy in a little bit too soon and possibly taking a chance on him to ruin him? Like we see a lot of prospects get thrown in today early. It seems like managers don't want to do the investing like they used to back in the day. They want to spend less money, a little bit cheap skating going on recently.
Cashing out, we call it in the business, yeah.
Where you used to take your time more in developing your prospect into a champion, while now we see guys getting rushed more. And we see a lot of good prospects getting beat. We saw Tellez over the weekend get beat as well, and that was that was one of the best prospects in the sport. They got him beat, So you see a little bit of some rush jobs happening more and more, and sometimes it works out, but a lot of times you see like a guy who you felt might become a can't miss champion. Now all of a sudden they may have ruined him, or they may have gotten him beat and sort of derailed his position. With Curmel and Roach, though, I think it's calculated. Like I said, Mayweather seems to have a really good eye for this stuff because Roach is not a big puncher himself. So when you rush your guy, Roach is not a big puncher himself.
Yes.
So when you rush your guy, you don't want to put him in with the puncher. But Roach is already a champion. When you're already at that championship level, dude, it is what it is. There's punchers, there's boxers, there's whatever. At that point, that's when you do take the chances because there's money involved and all this other stuff. Now, I know Roach says he has bigger fish to fry. There's more of a risk-reward factor when you go up against Shakur. If say if you lose against Shakur, it's Shakur Stevenson. If you lose against Curmel Moton, then it's like, well, who's
8-0 at the moment?
Yeah, who's Curmel Moton? Right. Dare I say, Western fighters, some of these amateur prospects have the look of what we were seeing the Eastern fighters become, where you can move them really fast.
Yep.
You can. I don't know if I'm not saying he doesn't, but I don't know yet how much of a discipline Curmel has. Because you talk about mental discipline. You don't see Eastern European fighters ever blowing the weight, ever. So those guys, they come almost ready-made to go into the contendership out of the amateurs, so you don't have to develop them for a long time. You're starting to see some Western fighters also become that, but do the young Western fighters with that hot shot mentality, a little bit arrogant, youthful arrogance that they had that tends to exist in the West, do they have the mentality for it? For me, Curmel is almost can't miss. Almost. But that almost still is a question mark. I'm not sure here. I'm not sure. I trust Mayweather's eye in a lot of ways, though, so it's interesting. But I don't think we get this fight. I think Lamont wants to take a chance in a different direction. I think it's a shame he didn't get Tank Davis. Tank was another one that Floyd did bring up and gave him his profile that they kept
spotted him early.
The momentum stayed with Gervonta. And Gervonta, honestly, for me, Tank wasn't mentally the guy on that level, and they just kept skating him away. And I think that, honestly, it's one of the reasons why world-class boxing in the West is dying, is because of guys like this being put in front of us. So I think that Champ, I'll let you talk, man, because I could just go on and on here. I'm really, really curious about your thoughts.
You're passionate
as
about
I'm talking about it, I'm curious and I'm kind of thinking on the fly when we're talking about it. Champ, I'll let you make your point. So
there's a little something here, Chris.
A lot of times the champ makes a point and then he'll make me think of something.
Please.
You made some really great points, and a lot of that I echo the sentiment on. But in terms of Moton being one of those guys you can move half, I absolutely believe that he is. And I think based on, one, his amateur pedigree, two, the fact that he's so physically gifted, so physically talented, but also the fact that he's got Mayweather. And you mentioned how Mayweather has an eye for these kinds of things. And listen, Mayweather has a brilliant boxing brain. And if he can see and dissect certain things that, that opponent or that Lamont Roach showed, because he was watching that Gervonta Davis very closely, that fight very, very closely. Now, does part of this be Mayweather and his ego that he wants to show Gervonta Davis or teach him a lesson? I'm gonna have my guy who's 8-0 beat the guy that everyone thinks just beat you, and he's pushing this fight because of that. But
offering
in terms of
offering to fund it,
yeah, he says he's offered to pay for it. Yep.
That's how bad he wants this fight. But also, how much of that is that he's like, all right, I see something that this kid could beat this kid. He could do it right now. But what is that little extra incentive for him? You know what? I can get over on Gervonta Davis if I get my guy to go in there and beat him. Because that would be a pie in the face to Gervonta Davis, for struggling so badly with Lamont Roach. And then this other Mayweather prospect comes in who's 8-0 and ends up getting that win, getting that title, not a title, but getting that win and having that over Gervonta Davis. So you know how Floyd is. Floyd is super competitive. He always wants to get over on you. He always wants to get one up on you. He always wants to beat everybody. I think part of it is that, but also, Champ, when you're mentioning about, he's a can't miss guy. The only thing you worry about is, that time he blew the weight. And I agree, because I think discipline is the big separator between these guys.
Because he blew about like 10 pounds, mind you. It wasn't just like...
Absolutely. But we got to keep in mind, that was a year and a half ago. He's 19. He was 18 years old. And listen, it's the pros. Things are a little different. You're getting used to your body. His body's growing and changing. But also now
it was also the day after Thanksgiving, so maybe he just didn't.
Okay, that's maturity.
Also discipline.
It's immaturity. It's immaturity, which I think as an 18-year-old, you can kind of you can look past it as long as it doesn't happen again. But also, you've got Mayweather now, who's one of the most disciplined fighters of any generation. The way that man trained, the way that he sacrificed to be what he was a staple of him as a stylist. So now you've got Floyd, who's your promoter, who's obviously showing a lot more interest in you and trying to push you into big fights right away. You don't think Floyd's going to be over there overseeing what's going on, making sure this kid stays completely focused for this fight? I think a heavy-handed Floyd behind Curmel Moton makes him a very, very dangerous young man. Now, does this fight happen? Absolutely not. I don't think Roach is going to take this fight.
Having said
this is all great talking points.
Right.
This is all fun. This fight's not happening, man, guys. Roach, when he's saying I'm looking for bigger and better things, if you notice, every time someone calls him out, he counters back. Gary Russell Jr. calls him out. I don't want Junior. I want Antoine. Yep. I don't want Junior. I want Antoine because he's a bigger, tougher fight. Even Floyd, he's put this out. Lamont called out Floyd. He said Curmel. He's like, I don't want Curmel. I'll fight you and see how much you got left. So you're getting these counters from Lamont. So I think this fight's pretty far-fetched. Maybe a little bit of a pipe dream for Mayweather. Lamont's looking for those big paydays. Dude, he was this close to getting that rematch with Gervonta, at least in his own mind. And that was a big payday, dude.
I mean, the right thing to do would have been the rematch. I mean,
yeah, of course.
We're scrambling for something else.
I talk about the death of world-class boxing in the West. I mean, what do we have right now? Think about it. Like, what do we have right now?
We got Jake Paul taking on Gervonta Davis.
Exactly
what
do we have right now? We don't have any bona fide Western American stars in the West in the pipeline that will fill arenas and make things go crazy and make big fights. We have a moronic fan base
Rodriguez.
We have a moronic fan base that will buy into Gervonta Davis versus the Uber driver fight, sure, but that's not going to carry the sport into the next generation. Bam is great, but Bam is still a little guy. Yeah. There's things you can do there, but I don't know if it's going to carry the same way.
Virgil Ortiz soon, maybe? He's around the cusp of that crossover, yeah.
Virgil is one that really I like. He definitely has the fighting ability down pat, and he has the mentality of a fighter down pat. The whole sticking point of being a star or not, it's weird to me. Like I feel like sometimes there's guys that have the total package of being a star and they don't, and then there's the guys that I wonder how they're even made into a star, and they don't have anything in my eyes. And so I don't know. For me, Virgil should be a star. I mean, for me, Virgil ticked all the boxes, but
Yes.
he's not. But at this point, if you have a guy like Virgil, who's the next in the pipeline, he's already filling up huge arenas, and Virgil's not right now, right? I mean, he's not that.
Not yet.
Star level
Not
of
yet.
popularity. But at this point in somebody's career, you can tell if they're going to be that guy. You know what I mean? Like Canelo, you could have told. Gervonta, even you could have told. But there's got to be a push too. Like I said, you can make the sneaker into the star. You know what I mean? Like there's no push anymore. The push is going all to Europe, all to Saudi Arabia, all and everything. Okay, and I'm not complaining about it. Fine. If that's the way it's going to go, that's the way it's going to go. As long as big fights happen. But then you are essentially making the big boxing event in the United States an endangered species.
What I'm curious about, please.
If you're happy with that, it's fine. But
let's continue with that a little bit, Chris, because the other news, of course, is Shakur Stevenson saying if the Teofimo Lopez fight falls through, that Lamont Roach Jr. could certainly be an option for him. This idea that, look, that's the fight that Lamont Roach is after. That's the one that would, as you guys are stating right now, would be a big fight, would sell a lot of tickets. What is your thought on that basically being the apex for Lamont Roach Jr.? How much do you shoot for that, or should he think about maybe a stay busy fight? People only remember you for so long, Chris.
This is the route that I initially said, and Champ and I disagreed because he didn't think he has a chance against Shakur, and that's pretty accurate. But I think that with a Shakur losing to Shakur at 135 isn't the worst thing in the world. And listen, he could go out there and look really good. I mean, his boxing IQ is very high. Shakur is just a different level. Or if he can make 130, go back down to 130, defend that belt. There's a bunch of good fights there. I'm just really hesitant to think that he can still make 130 at this age. As you're growing and spending more time at the weight, I've seen some photos of him lately, training him and whatnot. Lamont looks like a lightweight now. He doesn't look small. He didn't look small against Gervonta either. He looked like the bigger man in the ring. So how much of that weight can he really peel off at this point, at this stage of his career and his age? Probably not that much. So the Shakur Stevenson fight is a very good fight. I think I like that fight. I think it's a lucrative fight. I think it's a big profile fight, which is what Lamont and his team are looking for. And it's one of those fights where it's like, if it doesn't go your way, you're not blown out or hurt and embarrassed. I don't think Lamont gets embarrassed by Shakur. I think he's in the fight, and I think it's a worthy fight. And I think it would be a good show for Shakur as well, because I was like, all right, well, this is the guy that handed Gervonta a draw and most people think his first loss, and I'm going to go out there and fight this guy because I can't get the Gervonta fight. Gervonta doesn't want to fight this guy. I'll fight him. So I think it's good for both sides. It's a good fight.
Now, what I'm curious about, Paulie, and you and Chris can both speak to this. You guys were boxers more than punchers. That's Lamont Roach Jr. as well. He's a boxer more than a puncher. When you talk about him going up in weight class, Paulie, is the idea that he's had to outbox everybody at 30 and 35 as well? He hasn't required a whole lot of power. So he's kind of used to it in a sense. But in another sense, he doesn't have get-off-me power at 35 and 40. It's hard for him to keep a pressure guy off of him. What's your thought about him moving up?
Yeah, it depends on the pressure guy, I guess, right? I mean, is he fighting a Zepeda, for example, who's an all-out pressure guy? No, he's not fighting Zepeda. I mean, he may fight Shakur. Shakur is a tactical for tactical, but you would just, from the outside looking in, you would think, there's a lot more versatility to Shakur's boxing. Also, the height difference, the range control and whatnot. Listen, Lamont is solid, but Shakur is special. Shakur is just, like I said, I don't even think Tank would be competitive.
Generational talent.
Yeah, I think Shakur would outclass Tank too. Any version of Tank you want to give me at this point. I think Shakur would just 10-2 him, 11-1 him, 12-0 him. I think it would be that kind of fight. Matter of fact, knowing Tank has that quit in him, I think you never know how much Shakur would push him to that level of discomfort. We've never seen Tank put himself in any kind of uncomfortable situations and react very well. So I think Shakur in general is a special talent. It's a difficult proposition for Lamont to go up against Shakur, but Lamont is, 30, 31?
Yeah.
So he's at the point in his career where he's won a world championship. He probably should have won a second world championship. He's at the point where, listen, this is where I enjoy the resume I've built, and I've got to make the money I've got to make now. So I can see
the money-making years. Yeah.
I can see him, why you want to make the Shakur Stevenson fight, because Lamont is a lifetime in boxing. He's been very disciplined. He's a very good fighter himself. He's shown to be world-class. Like I said, he's solid, and he's world-class. you take the risk. You take the gamble, because if you lose to Shakur Stevenson, has anybody been competitive against Shakur Stevenson? Not really. So it's not like, you take a chance and maybe you'll do something nobody else did. But if you don't, hey man, listen, nobody else was very competitive against Shakur either. So you kind of remain in the mix, as opposed to the Curmel Moton fight, where there's a lot of risk in some ways, but not a lot to gain. You knock off Curmel Moton, people are going to say, oh, all right.
Keeps you busy, but doesn't do a lot for you.
But it's too dangerous of a stay busy fight. You know what I mean? It's a stay busy fight, okay, because Curmel is not known enough for it to bring anything else to the table. But dude, it's a risky stay busy fight. Usually stay busy fights are, they're a little bit easier than that. So that's why I agree with the champ when they say, yeah, we can talk about it, but I'm not sure it happens right now. I mean, I know Floyd offered to fund it, but he would have to super fund it. And it's just not feasible even for Floyd to do that,
What I'm curious about, Chris, as we wrap this up, what we're seeing is an era where you can take an L and it isn't the end of the world. Is that why for the Moton fight? All right, Moton loses. Okay, he gets outboxed by Lamont Roach. Not a huge puncher, probably just gets outboxed in that fight. All right, it's your first L. It is not the end of the world. Him losing to Shakur Stevenson, once again, not the end of the world. In a sense, is it a good thing that we're getting out of the Money Mayweather era where you had to be undefeated, and these are the kind of decisions you can make as a fighter and go, hey, if I take one loss, I'm still a decent name. I can still make money. What's your thought?
It's a great thing. It's not just a good thing. We need to get away from the I need my champions to be undefeated. We have weight classes where there's 3 different champions and they're all undefeated. I don't know how that I can't math that in my head how that works out. You got 3 undefeated guys in one weight class, and we've seen it over time and time again recently. Guys just aren't willing to fight each other. Aren't willing to risk the O. I'd rather see guys who are willing to fight the best take a loss and then come back. We talk about 154 all the time, how deep that division is. And we say, if those guys all fight each other, I don't think anybody's coming out undefeated. I think this guy's going to beat that guy. This guy's going to beat this guy. The boxing math doesn't math when it comes to high level guys like that. You take risks, you fight each other, you lose. It's like the Four Kings era. These guys all fought each other. People lost. They took losses. They kept coming. They kept winning world titles in different weight classes. We need to get back to that. And it seems like boxing is healing, and we are getting back to that. We are getting young guys who are taking risk early on with the help of Saudi and the Saudi money that's come from over there, making these fights happen that maybe we wouldn't see right away. But all in all, yeah, with Curmel Moton, he takes a loss to Lamont Roach in his 9th professional fight. Is it that damaging to his career? I don't think so. And I think it's a valuable learning experience. You mentioned that Lamont's not really a puncher. He's a tactical guy. He's a tactician. I think Moton would probably be the bigger of the two. Moton has fought between 35 and 140, and like I said, he's growing. He's 19 years old. I remember growing like a weed when I was that age. So it's an interesting idea. I don't think we see it. But to your point, Jimmy, I don't think a loss at this stage of his career against a top flight guy like a Lamont Roach, a former world champion, or current world champion actually at 130, is that damaging to his career long term.
And I'll tell you what, Jim, you're basing that conversation off the fact that we should see Curmel do it because it's not a big risk. It's a worthwhile risk even if he loses. Curmel wants to fight. Floyd wants to fight.
Yeah,
it's more Lamont wanting to do something bigger after everything he's accomplished, and he's like, okay, this isn't big enough for me.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Roach definitely beats him. And
that's what I'm saying too. Yeah, I was gonna say because Curmel's bigger.
Yeah.
He and like I said, I saw him blow the weight by a lot. He's a big kid, in that fight last year, that fight that fell through last year.
156 and 7 as an amateur. 156 and 7. So
he's so young. His development as a professional and his physical maturity is going to be so fast. When you're that age, it's like this.
But I'll tell you what.
He could be a completely different guy.
I'll tell you what. Remember, when you push guys that fast, physically they can hang. You find out if they can hang mentally. If they're willing to sub, because at that point, once you're fighting at world class level, you can't just pick a spot and then go back down a lower level. Once you fight at world class level, you have to stay at world class level. And so you have to be ready for the discomfort some of those fights bring, because the world class level fights bring you discomfort. Not everybody gets the Gervonta Davis route, So, and it's going to be a lot harder because more and more people are calling out that BS in this generation. So you got to be willing to match up physically and mentally. Like I said, we just saw over the weekend what happened to Tellez, who for me have been a can't miss prospect. And
same.
And I can't say, he couldn't hang mentally. He hung as tough as he possibly could, but he just wasn't ready for that kind of pace. He wasn't ready for that kind of physicality quite yet. I think he would have been in a year, but obviously hindsight is 2020. But again, we're seeing a lot of these guys really get rushed a lot more and more in this generation. I don't know, the value of your dollar is not as much, so people don't want to invest as quickly, but invest as slowly like they did before and build up a guy. They want ready-made guys out of the amateurs already, which I was actually having this conversation with a friend of mine yesterday. It's interesting because if you go from high-level amateur to world-class pro right away, if that's going to be the new transition with less building up, less investment from money people, which is, the money people always, they want to spend there, even though they're rich, they want to spend less and get more, right? Yeah. And if you're starting to curtail the developmental process, you're going right from the world-class amateur. You don't really get a developmental stage. You go almost right to world-class stage. Boxing becomes almost like every other pro sport where you go from the NCAA. If you're a high-level draft pick, you're going right to the major league pros.
Starting.
You're starting, or you're maybe sitting out a year the way Eli Manning did with Kurt Warner. So I was, as a Giant fan, I'll use the Giant expression. But Eli did a year behind Kurt Warner before he became the starter, or Aaron Rodgers behind Brett Favre. Right in those days, back when I used to watch football, before they ruined that sport too.
You're expected to contribute fast.
So you're expected to contribute fast, or even Peyton Manning, they threw him in right away as a starter. You know what I mean? And he had
a terrible team.
Yeah, and he had like a 50-50 year, but you could see the potential. For me, the Peyton Manning expression is actually more realistic here, Chan, because I remember Peyton Manning had a lot of touchdown passes rookie year, but also a lot of interceptions because they just threw him in there. So it's the prospect who you throw in really quickly, and maybe he takes a loss, but you can see so much potential. He's going to become a star anyway. So I think if boxing is going that way, where you're going to go from world-class amateur, you're not going to get the development. Sorry, guys, it's just the way it's going to be. These guys don't want to spend any money. Then is it good or bad that the pro boxing becomes almost like other pro sports? I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I'm just putting that out there. Maybe in the comments, people will say something with that analogy. But it's something to keep in mind. Where I feel like that's the way it's going. You're going from world-class amateur to world-class pro instantly now. Nobody's developing you anymore. And that's what happens in other sports when you look at the NCAA.
Yeah.
Well, listen, so here's a good prime example. David Morrell, high level amateur, comes into the pros, is in very, very tough very early on, and then fights a world champion at the top of the division. David Benavidez is one of the stars of the sport. Gets in, takes a loss. Wasn't an embarrassing loss. It was a good fight. He fought well. He got outworked with someone more experience. He came back with another really tough fight, like right after that. David Morrell, he's going this new route in terms of not needing a big developmental stage and going right into tough fights.
No. You insult him a little bit, champ. You insult him a little bit because you can also ruin prospects like this too. There's a flip side to that. Is Morrell
absolutely?
Is Morrell the same? He's been in 2 rough back-to-back fights all of a sudden. And have you ruined Morrell or have you debilitated him? Because some prospects get ruined when you move them too fast. I wonder what's going on. What's going to happen to Tellez? Tellez was amazing. I feel bad for Tellez, man. That was a rough ass fight for a guy who hadn't been that many rounds at that level and just be pushed and physically debilitated. He got dropped at the end. Short heart, lost on points. We'll see if mentally how that gets you. Because remember the Meldrick Taylor route, man. You know what I mean? Meldrick after the Chavez fight was never the same.
Why are you breaking my heart?
That guy wasn't Chavez. Let me put it that way. That guy was tough. But
but what I'm saying is Meldrick was a world champion, so you moved him fast. Fernando Vargas, even, you know what I mean? Like even at championship level, like there's
David Reed
versus Felix Trinidad.
We had those guys, and now we got Tank Davis, who never fights a 50-50 fight his whole career.
You like depressing me at the end, Paulie. That's what you do. We appreciate, of course, the champs giving us their input. Boxing Scene Today, as you know, when it makes boxing news, you'll see it right here. Join us. Find out why millions are watching. Why did you send me home like that, Paulie?
I'm sorry.
Meldrick Taylor.
Got to do it.